Imagine spending your entire life sleeping on the hard, unforgiving ground, surrounded by the shadows of a prehistoric wilderness. Most of us cannot fathom a night without a mattress, a pillow, and the climate control of a modern home, yet our ancestors thrived in these conditions for hundreds of thousands of years. The modern bed is a relatively new invention. For the vast majority of human history, sleep was an opportunistic, rugged, and communal activity. To understand how early humans slept, we have to look past the myths of the caveman and dive into the anthropological reality of the Paleolithic era. Archaeologists have spent decades excavating sites ranging from South Africa to the icy reaches of Siberia. What they have found reveals a sophisticated relationship with rest. The first thing we need to dispel is the idea that early humans just curled up in the dirt like stray dogs. Archaeological evidence from the Border Cave in South Africa, dating back roughly 200,000 years, shows that humans were actually quite picky about their sleeping arrangements. Researchers found layers of charred grass and woody plants buried deep within the cave floor. These weren't just piles of debris, they were intentional bedding mats. These ancient people understood that sleeping on the bare ground was a recipe for disaster. The earth is a heat sink. It conducts heat away from your body, causing you to lose core temperature rapidly throughout the night. By layering grasses, twigs, and leaves, they created a thermal barrier. This insulation worked exactly like modern camping equipment. It trapped air between the plant stalks, creating a pocket that warmed up from the sleeper's own body heat. But there was another, even more clever reason for this. Insects were the bane of existence for the Pleistocene human. Ticks, lice, and mosquitoes carried diseases and caused constant discomfort. The border cave bedding included aromatic plants, specifically camphor bushes. These plants contain natural insect repellents. By sleeping on top of these bushes, early humans were essentially creating a pest-free zone. This was not a primitive act. This was an early form of environmental engineering. They were altering their sleeping microenvironment to optimize health and hygiene. But what about the concept of the pillow? Most of us feel a sense of dread if we don't have a soft surface for our heads. However, the need for a pillow is often more about posture and habit than biological necessity. Ancient humans often slept in a position that kept their heads slightly elevated, not for neck comfort, but for alertness. Sleeping with the head supported by a rock or a log allowed them to keep an eye on the entrance of a cave or the perimeter of a camp. In a world of apex predators, total deep sleep was a luxury you couldn't always afford. This brings us to the structure of sleep itself. We are obsessed with the idea of 8 consecutive hours. We call this monophasic sleep. We strive for it. We panic when we don't get it. But this is a modern construct. Historical and anthropological data suggests that pre-industrial humans practiced biphasic or polyphasic sleep. They didn't go to bed at 10 and wake up at 6. Instead, they often slept in two distinct chunks. The first sleep would begin shortly after sunset. They would wake up around midnight for a period of activity, maybe an hour or two of socializing, tending to the fire or light chores, before heading back for a second sleep until sunrise. This wasn't insomnia, it was a rhythm. This rhythm persisted well into the early modern era. Historical records from the 17th century describe the first sleep and the second sleep as standard practice. Our ancestors were not sleep deprived. They were simply synced with the light-dark cycle of the planet rather than the arbitrary schedule of an alarm clock. So, where exactly did they sleep? The caveman moniker is a bit of a misnomer. While caves provided excellent shelter from the elements and predators, they were also damp, dark, and often occupied by bears or hyenas. For the most part, ancient humans were nomadic. They were following the migration patterns of herds and the seasonal availability of plants. Their sleeping arrangements had to be portable or easily reconstructible. In warmer climates, they slept under the stars. But they didn't sleep alone. Social thermoregulation was the primary survival strategy. Sleeping in a group, often in physical contact with others, served two purposes. First, it kept everyone warmer. Second, it provided a collective defense system. If a predator approached, the group had a higher chance of detecting the threat than a single individual. This social sleep was deeply embedded in our biology. Even today, the presence of others can regulate our heart rate and provide a sense of security that promotes deeper rest. But as the climate shifted, so did the technology of sleep. When early humans migrated into colder environments, they had to innovate. This is where the invention of sophisticated clothing and shelters became a matter of life and death. The development of the fur cloak was arguably the most important sleep tool in human history. A human without a bed in a sub-zero environment will not survive the night, but a human wrapped in layers of animal hide, lying on a platform of dried grass, could sleep soundly while the temperature dropped below freezing. Consider the Neanderthals. They were masters of their environment. Evidence from sites in modern-day France suggests they used large, discarded bones to create raised sleeping platforms. Why raise the bed? To stay away from the damp ground, yes, but also to stay clear of the crawling insects that thrived in the dark crevices of a cave floor. These platforms were the precursors to the bed frame. They were not designed for luxury, they were designed for survival. Fast forward to the Neolithic Revolution, roughly 10,000 years ago. This is when everything changed. Once humans started settling down and farming, they stopped needing to be so mobile. They could afford to build permanent structures. In places like Skara Brae in the Orkney Islands, archaeologists found stone slab beds. These were built into the walls of the houses. They were essentially stone boxes filled with heather and skins. Suddenly, sleep became a fixed point in the home. But even then, the bed was not the soft, memory foam-filled sanctuary we know today. It was a functional platform. It served as a place to sit, a place to work on tools, and a place to sleep. The evolution of the bed is tied directly to the evolution of human comfort. As we moved away from the threat of constant predation, we could afford to spend more time in a state of deep, uninterrupted rest. But are we actually better off? Our modern beds are designed to reduce pressure points and keep our spines aligned, yet we suffer from chronic sleep disorders at rates higher than any point in human history. Could the issue be that our beds are too comfortable? Maybe. There is a theory known as the evolutionary mismatch. We evolved to sleep on uneven, firm surfaces that engaged our muscles and kept our joints mobile. We evolved to wake up periodically throughout the night. We evolved to be synced with the sun. When we force ourselves into a standard 8-hour block on a perfectly flat, soft surface, we are ignoring the physiological cues our bodies have relied on for millions of years. This isn't to say we should throw out our mattresses and sleep on the floor tonight, but it is worth considering that the way we sleep is a cultural choice, not a biological necessity. Looking at how our ancestors slept reveals something profound about the human spirit. It shows that even in the harshest environments, we never just endured. We adapted, we engineered, we found ways to make the wilderness a home. They didn't have alarm clocks, yet they knew exactly when to wake up. They didn't have blackout curtains, yet they knew exactly when to sleep. They lived in harmony with a rhythm that we have traded for convenience. As you lie in your bed tonight, consider the millions of years of human evolution that happened before the invention of the mattress. Consider the nights spent under the vast, starry sky, the communal warmth of the fire, and the silent vigilance of the group. We are the descendants of the best sleepers who ever lived. They survived because they mastered the art of rest. Perhaps in our quest for the perfect sleep environment, we have forgotten that the most natural way to rest is not to escape the world, but to be deeply, rhythmically, and socially connected to it. The next time you find yourself tossing and turning, unable to find that perfect position, remember the grass mats of the border cave. Remember the stone beds of the Neolithic farmers. Sleep is not a commodity you buy. It is an ancient, biological, and essential dialogue with the planet that we have been having since the very beginning. If we have reached a point where we are more sleep-deprived than our ancestors who faced lions and freezing winters, we have to ask ourselves, is the problem the bed or is it us? We have optimized the environment for our bodies, but perhaps we have forgotten to optimize our lives for our minds. The journey from the cave floor to the luxury mattress is a story of human progress, but it is also a story of a long, slow drift away from our own natural, ancestral rhythm. In the end, sleep remains the great equalizer. It is the one thing that binds us to the first humans who ever looked at the sunset and knew that the night was not something to fear, but a time to prepare for the day ahead. The challenge of the future is not to find a softer pillow or a better sleep mask. The challenge is to reclaim the peace of mind that our ancestors had, even when they were sleeping on nothing but a handful of dried grass in a dark, silent cave.